You're 53. The man trimming your hedges looks up and asks the same question he always asks. Factory still keeping you busy? You say, busy enough. He has no idea the quiet business built around your 7 patents is worth $61.4 million, and you've never corrected him. The story starts 29 years earlier with a failed bearing seal and a $2,100 patent filing. Level 1. The name on the patent. You're 24, working the floor at an automotive parts factory. One machine keeps failing. Dust and heat are chewing through its bearing seal faster than anyone expected. Every failure means lost labor, lost parts, lost production time. So after your shift ends, you stay. You read the maintenance reports nobody else wants to read, and you find something. A new shape for the seal. A different way for 2 materials to meet. The bench tests come back promising. Almost 30% longer maintenance intervals. Multiply that across hundreds of machines running around the clock, and that number stops being a statistic. It becomes real money. So you hire a patent agent. His name is Owen. Filing costs $2,100, nearly everything you've saved. Before he files anything, Owen asks one question that changes the entire trajectory of your life. Should you own this personally, or should a company own it? Your gut says, use your name. You built this. Your name should be on it. But Owen explains something you've never thought about. Inventing something and running a licensing business, those are 2 completely different jobs. Your name can stay on the patent, but a separate entity can hold the commercial rights, sign the licenses, collect the royalties, carry the legal weight. You spend another $310. The entity gets formed. Owen files the paperwork. Then you go back to work like nothing happened. To everyone at the factory, you're still just the guy who fixed the seal problem. Nobody sees what's actually starting here. Your name is on the patent. But very soon, the companies using your invention are going to have almost no reason to ever learn who you are. Level 2. The first company that pays. Fast forward to 28. You now have 3 patents. 3 manufacturers licensing them. Standard royalty, around 3% of net sales. Sounds simple. It isn't. Because all 3 companies define net sales differently. One deducts returns. One deducts freight. And the third? They're deducting packaging, tech support, distributor incentives, and something called market development, which apparently means whatever they want it to mean that quarter. So your lawyer, Deborah, steps in and rewrites everything. Each patent gets its own entity, its own contract, its own account, its own paper trail. And every agreement now comes with strict reporting rules, plus the right to audit the numbers. Deborah introduces you to Terrence, an outside licensing agent. 2 quarters later, Terrence catches something. One manufacturer quietly removed an entire category of replacement kits from their royalty report. Their excuse? Those are service parts. The contract's answer? No, those are licensed products. After the review, they correct the report. They pay what they owe. And that's the moment it clicks for you. Owning a patent doesn't guarantee you get paid what you're owed for it. At 33, one of your licensees gets pulled into an internal ownership dispute, and your contract with them gets dragged into the mess too. But here's the thing. The other 2 manufacturers? They keep paying. Different entities, different accounts, different contracts. The structure doesn't make the dispute vanish. It just stops one bad contract from freezing your entire portfolio. These companies know the patent numbers. Their finance departments know exactly where to wire the money. But almost nobody inside those companies knows the name of the engineer who created any of it. Level 3. The man who stops taking calls. 1 year earlier, at 32, your portfolio hits 7 patents. Legally, everything's separated and protected. Practically, it's chaos. 7 sets of reports, 7 reconciliations, patent deadlines scattered across different countries. Miss one date, and you could lose an asset that took years to build. So you place all 7 entities under one parent company. Still legally separate, But now you can oversee everything from a single point. Terrence becomes your exclusive licensing director. He standardizes the reports, builds a renewal calendar, starts fielding almost every call from manufacturers himself. During one big renewal, a manufacturer claims sales are dropping. They want a lower royalty rate. Terrence checks the actual unit numbers. Sales aren't dropping, they're rising. The decline is fake. It's coming from the manufacturer quietly routing product through an affiliated distributor at a discounted internal price. Instead of cutting the rate, Terrence flips the negotiation. He locks in a minimum annual guarantee, tighter rules on related party sales. That one negotiation becomes the template for every deal after it. You also start paying $145 a year for a registered agent service, just to make sure legal notices land at the right address, even when you're traveling. By year's end, your patents are showing up in more products than ever. But you're showing up in fewer and fewer meetings. The companies deal with Terrence. The contracts deal with your entities. The machines keep running on your designs, without you ever needing to be in the room. Level 4. The system that works without you. At 36, Deborah asks you a hard question. What happens if you can't work for 6 months? Terrence can negotiate, but he doesn't own the patents. Deborah can advise, but she can't make every business call for you. Someone still needs the authority to approve renewals, pay maintenance fees, and stop a missed deadline from turning a valuable patent into a dead one. So the parent company moves into a trust. You and Deborah pick a neutral name, nothing tied to your surname, nothing tied to your old employer. Privacy is nice, but that's not really the point. Continuity is the point. Deborah has you build a master schedule. Every patent, every assignment, every territory, every license, every renewal date, every responsible person. Then she writes out exactly what happens if you're ever unavailable. Now the trustee follows a defined process. Terrence keeps running the licenses. Patent counsel handles maintenance decisions. Yes, this structure costs money to maintain every year, but it eliminates the single biggest risk in the entire system: you. And here's the pattern you start noticing. The less this business depends on you being present, the less anyone outside it ever needs to know who you actually are. Level 5. The offer everyone thinks you'll take. At 40, one of the biggest manufacturers in the industry offers to buy your original patent family outright. The seal that started everything. The number is big. Big enough that most engineers would sign on the spot and walk away for good. The buyer assumes that's exactly what you'll do. One signature, one payment, no more audits, no more renewals, no more quarterly reports. Terrence ignores the headline number completely. Instead, he asks for the buyer's production forecast. They hand over 3 years of projections. Terrence asks for 10. Then he rebuilds their entire offer, using their own unit projections, your existing 3% royalty, the guaranteed minimums, and the remaining life of the patent. The result? Their generous buyout is worth less than 8 years of conservative royalty income. Alone. Deborah finds a second problem, buried in the fine print. A restriction broad enough to block your future work in nearby seal technologies. This buyer isn't just trying to purchase a patent family. They're trying to quietly claim your next decade. You reject the offer. But Terrence doesn't walk away. He keeps negotiating. The manufacturer ends up with broader territorial rights, plus an option on one clearly defined future patent. And you? You get an upfront payment. You keep the running royalty. You lock in a minimum annual guarantee. And you preserve full rights to license anything you invent next. The buyer gets certainty. You keep the long game. They know your patents are valuable. What they don't know is that you're already wealthy enough to simply walk away from the table. Level 6. The friend who doesn't know the number. Your old college friend Malcolm runs a small precision instrument repair shop. One afternoon he calls. A big machine is sitting half taken apart on his shop floor. Replacement parts are running over budget, and an unresolved tax penalty is making everything worse. Total shortfall, about $14,000. You could wire the money before the call even ends. Instead, you ask him to send every invoice, and that weekend, you fly out to see him in person. You sit at a table behind his workshop, bills sorted into 3 piles, coffee strong enough to strip paint. You go through every charge together, and you find it. One supplier quoted the wrong component entirely, inflating the bill by nearly $2,200. Malcolm catches the technical error. You catch what it did to the price. Together, you challenge the quote and get the difference back. The tax penalty still needs paying. You offer to cover it. Malcolm says yes, but only under one condition. It has to be written down properly. Then he adds a second condition: no equity. He doesn't want this rescue turning his shop into just another line item in your portfolio. So you write up a simple personal loan, a repayment schedule he can actually keep. He keeps full ownership. You get no board seat, no percentage of future work, no say over his customers. A few months later, Malcolm makes his first payment, right on schedule. That amount barely registers on your balance sheet, but to him, it means everything. Malcolm has no idea what you're actually worth, and he doesn't need to. What he needs to know is that accepting your help won't cost him control of his own life. Manufacturers know your assets, but barely know you. Malcolm knows you, but has no idea how large those assets have become. Level 7. The only outsider who sees everything. At 48, someone sues you. Personally. His name is Nolan. Years ago, he shared lab space with you and signed as a witness on your very first patent application. Now he claims an old verbal agreement entitles him to a stake in every patent you've developed since. For nearly 5 months, both sides trade documents back and forth. And unlike the stories where secret companies stay hidden forever, yours doesn't. Nolan's lawyer sees the trust, sees the parent company, sees all 7 entities, their bank records, every licensing agreement attached to them. For the first time, an outsider sees the entire picture. But seeing it isn't the same as proving he owns any part of it. Deborah makes his legal team trace every single patent, one at a time. The lab notebooks show exactly when each design was developed. The assignment records show exactly when ownership transferred to each entity. The patent files show which claims belong to which invention. The bank records show separate income streams, separate expenses, no overlap. And the biggest problem for Nolan? He has no document proving his alleged verbal agreement covers the 6 inventions that came after that first one. He witnessed a signature. That's not the same as owning everything that followed. The case still isn't cheap. Even a strong defense eats up months of legal work, depositions, attention. So it settles for $31,000. Not because the assets couldn't be traced, but because Nolan can't connect his limited involvement to ownership of the later patents. And both sides know exactly what dragging this out further would cost. You don't see the outcome as proof that paperwork is some kind of magic shield. You see it as proof that documentation matters, especially when memory, money, and an old verbal promise all collide at once. Nolan finally learns just how big this system really is. What he never proves is that any of it belongs to him.
Level 8. They know the part number, not your name. At 53, you walk back into the same factory where this all began. It's changed owners twice since then. The old engineering lab is now just a training room. Most people on the floor have no idea you ever worked here. A maintenance supervisor asks you to inspect a modern machine, running the latest version of your seal design. On the workbench sits the original failed part, the one that started everything. Right beside it, the current version. Different materials, different geometry, decades of field data compressed into a piece small enough to hold in one hand. While the machine starts its test cycle, your phone buzzes. It's the holding company controller, quarterly consolidated valuation. The number at the top, $61.4 million. That's not cash sitting in an account somewhere. It's the estimated net value of the entire system after liabilities, the independently valued patent interests, the accumulated royalty reserves, the diversified assets built up over 2 decades of reinvesting surplus licensing income. That first million didn't arrive in one dramatic moment. It built up slowly, through 7 licensing programs, minimum guarantees, corrected royalty reports, hard-fought renewals, and years of reinvesting money the entities didn't need for taxes, legal work, patent maintenance, or day-to-day operations. Terrence has already flagged one manufacturer's suspicious sales forecast. Deborah's noted a maintenance payment due next month. Even at $61.4 million, this system still runs on someone checking contracts, someone tracking deadlines. You put your phone away. The machine hits operating temperature. No leak, no shutdown. The supervisor pulls up the service history. The current seal is extending maintenance intervals by 29.4%, almost exactly what your bench tests predicted back when you were 24 years old. The people standing in this factory know the part number. They know how many hours it saves. They know which machine it belongs in and when it needs replacing. What they don't know is that the ordinary engineer standing next to them designed the original and still owns the entire system built around it. The machine finishes its test. The supervisor signs the log, sends it back down to the floor. And maybe that's the real story here. Not just that you became worth $61.4 million, but that your invention became known everywhere it mattered, without you ever needing to be.